Friday night again. Welcome back to another episode of Charlie Cat Presents. And I hope that you will enjoy this. I'm your host, Dennis Morrison. Tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go away from the artifacts and maybe take a little trip through time. You see, I know I don't look it. I mean, seriously, I know I don't look it, but yes, I am 65 years old. Yeah, don't argue with me, I'm sure you won't. Because I look it, and I definitely feel it. But seriously, looking back over the 6 decades of my life, I can truly say that being a boy were some of the best times of my life. And that's in part because I had a great mom and dad. They were awesome. They took good care of us. I was fortunate in many ways. I had all the coolest toys that came out. At Christmas time, we got... I mean, the living room was virtually full of presents. And so, of course, mom and dad paid on it for the rest of the year, but I had the coolest toys that were out. And also I had, more importantly, some very good friends that I could go exploring with, biking around town with, and even occasionally on a very hot and humid summer day, skinny dipping with. Something you can't try anymore because you'd be probably thrown into juvie if you did. But not all my friends had it as good as I did, unfortunately. There was a young boy who lived about a half a mile behind my house on another street. His name was Jamie Bronson. And his family didn't have a whole lot. And I remember one day, Jamie said to me, presumably joking, I hope, that he said, "Dennis, my family's so poor that if I had not been born a boy, I would have absolutely nothing to play with." Think about that for a moment. And you'll understand why I never invited him over to play with his toys with him. But anyways, I happened across a series of cartoons titled American Boyhood, and they were published in 1910. And each one is a little time capsule, if you will, by which we can view the life of American boys 110 years ago. And they are not real detailed cartoons as far as background is concerned, but what is there is pretty interesting. So be sure you look at those little details, like on some of the porches you'll see a boot scraper, and other things that you just, don't see anymore. My apologies to all the ladies in the audience. If I ever find a collection of cartoons dealing with girlhood in the past, I'd love to do a companion video to this. And I am on the lookout for something like that. But again, I'm sure it was very special to be a girl growing up in that era, 1910, or in any era, doesn't matter. So, having said that, I also have interspersed throughout here between sets of cartoons some memories of my own childhood that I hope that maybe you will find interesting and enjoy. So with that said, let's take a look at that first set of cartoons. I have got to find somebody to stop and start this camera for me. But so far I have not. Well, the first memory I'd like to share with you, it was growing up in Bridgeport, Michigan. And my folks had a huge backyard there. And half of it was always a garden. And my dad was an avid gardener, and in the summertime he provided most of the homes in our little neighborhood there with fresh vegetables. And when it was time to harvest those vegetables, I remember going with Dad to pull carrots and radishes. It would be frowned on today to do what I did. I'd wipe the dirt off on my jeans, and I munched away. And the taste was amazing, fresh out of the garden. And the grittiness from the dirt that didn't get removed, it just added to the experience, and it sure never hurt me. 65 years later, I'm still functioning. So a little bit of grittiness did not hurt me at all. But then there were the small baby potatoes and peas, and digging out those luscious little nuggets out of the ground was like a treasure hunt, and they were good. And my sister Roseanne and I, we would sit in the backyard at the picnic table, opening pea pods and dropping those jade green gems into a bowl. And we'd get a certain amount there, and then I remember Mom would come, gather them up, and make the most delicious cream peas and potatoes that you can possibly imagine. You know, almost 5 decades later, 6 decades later, as I talk about them, I can still taste those. They were so good. But once when I was in the garden with my dad, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and he was hoeing the weeds, and he found a small, about 1 inch long, brown flint arrowhead. And the small artifact fired my Okay, let's see, dum-da-dum-dum. Here we go again, walking back into the picture. Sorry about that, my dear friends and viewers. Well, I want to share another vacation memory with you. This one is about... Did I say I want to share another vacation memory with you? That is what I'm going to share with you this time. Anyways, when I was a boy, my family often vacationed at a place called Pop's Cottage. Now, Pop's Cottage was on Tawas Lake in Tawas, Michigan, and it belonged to Bill Pop, who was a farmer from Bridgeport, Michigan, who became my brother's father-in-law. And he was a very kind man, and was very generous in letting people use his cottage, because he didn't use it that much. And as I say, he was a very kind man. The cottage was in a rural, kind of rustic setting. There were other cottages around, but it was, you know, kind of separated from them by trees and such. And it looked long and pieced together. So it had been there a long time. Well, going there was a fun escape for me, though there were a few things that I was not fond of, but by and large I loved the vacations at Pop's Cottage. But there was no running water, so if you had to use the bathroom, you had to go back to the outhouse that was behind the cottage. And when I washed up at night, I had to go into the kitchen and hand pump the water into a sink, and that water was bitter cold. It was really cold. So you got to get done washing up as quickly as you possibly could. Now, if we needed heat, there was a wood-burning stove, but it was actually better to be cold than use that, because it so smoked up the cottage that it burned your eyes, it burned your nose, your throat, and, well, it was just a pain in the rear to use. But speaking of pain in the rear, there was one thing I hated more than anything, and that was when nature called late, or in the wee hours of the morning. For those occasions, there were chamber pots, or a more accurate description, if you'll pardon the term, poop pots. And if you're not familiar with what a chamber pot is, they were a pot slid under the beds, and if you had to go to the bathroom at night, you pulled them out, did your business in there, covered them, shoved them back in, and emptied them in the morning. So I didn't like those, but sometimes I was unfortunate enough to have to go at night when everyone else was asleep, and I didn't want to go way out back to the outhouse because it was dark and there were no lights out there, and I didn't want to run into a bear or a skunk or possibly even a Sasquatch. So I just used the pot, sort of bore with it, if you will. Well, one particular night, everyone was sleeping, even myself, and I was slowly awakened by a griping stomach ache that was building up. Have you ever been there? You wake up in the middle of the night, your stomach starts hurting, and you ignore it and hope that it'll go away and you can go back to sleep, but it just doesn't let up. Well, I was slowly awakened by this gripping stomach ache that was building up. The room, to make things worse, was hot and humid, and a thunderstorm had just begun outside, and it was a bad one. And so I tried to ignore my stomach, which was churning and gurgling loudly, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. So in the dark, I grabbed a poop pot, which was a white enamel monster with a gaping red rim. And it was just waiting to inflict pain on a young boy's butt, and I happened to be the boy that night. If you've never sat your bare butt on one of these, you cannot imagine the pain. After just a few minutes, it really hurts bad. So I took the pot into the most private place I could find in case somebody got up, because I didn't want to have them watch me doing my business there. So I took the pot out into the kitchen and I sat it under these double windows that opened inward, which blew open, and rain was coming in, and I had to get up and close those a couple times, which was in itself rather awkward. The thunder and lightning was continuous, and it was so strong. But I had no choice. I dropped my underwear and I sat down on the enamel monster to await some action. And as the minutes ticked by, and that red metal rim was biting into my butt cheeks, I was sure I was going to be struck by lightning there, and I was going to have that thing fused to my behind for the rest of my life. Well, fortunately, I didn't get struck. But alas, there came that blessed relief, and I was able to return to bed and back to sleep. But the storm went on unabated until morning. You know, it's funny. I loved that cottage and going there, and I have so many good memories of it. But as I was looking at these cartoons and preparing this is the only one that came to mind. So I hope that maybe you can relate to it somewhat. And let's go back to another set of cartoons, and then I'm going to give you my last memories for this video. And so here I go again, jumping up, and we will turn off the camera, and then let's see. Oh, and here we go again. Here we go again. This memory is kind of a favorite one of mine. You see, when I was a boy, encyclopedia manufacturers were always putting offers in magazines for cool free gifts, and just for listening to a salesman that would happily come to your home for a visit. And that could cause a problem for a curious boy like myself. Well, my dad worked long hard days at Chevrolet Transmission here in Saginaw, Michigan, and while us kids wanted for nothing, there was not a lot of money to spare. So when Dad got home in the late afternoon, though, he would unwind with a cold beer and maybe work a bit in his garden before dinner. And I imagine the last thing that he would have wanted to do was spend an hour or so hearing a sales pitch for a product he could not afford just to get a free gift. Okay, it was about 1967, and I was 13 years old, and I was fascinated by the race between the United States of America and the Soviet Union to get to the moon first. So without hesitation, when I found a coupon offering a free and detailed moon globe just for hearing out an encyclopedia salesman, I sent the coupon in. What boy wouldn't, eh? I wanted that globe, and so I never even asked permission. I never mentioned it because I didn't want to be told no. So I took it out of the magazine, stuck a 3-cent stamp on it, I think it was at that time, and sent it off. Weeks later, one hot afternoon, my dad had just gotten home from work and a car pulled in directly behind him. And my mom went out to the garage to see who it was and returned shortly and asked me, "Did you send in a coupon for a free moon globe?" Well, I was caught, you know. I am sure guilt was written all over that innocent young face of mine. And I was hoping Dad was not real upset and would not just send the salesman packing. The time began ticking by. Mom took a cold beer out for Dad and for the salesman, and I figured that was a good sign. I figured if they were having a beer together, then Dad must be hearing him out, you know. So it looked as if supper was going to be late as the clock ticked off a half an hour, then 45 minutes, an hour. And after an hour and a half, I heard the salesman car pull out of the driveway. And Mom took another cold one out to Dad, and then came back to tell me that Dad wanted to see me out in the garage. Well, I was a bit afraid that he might be mad, but I was not afraid of him. I loved my dad, and never feared him really, but held him in great respect. He never gave me reason to fear him. But I tried, can't say I never did, but I tried to never give him reason to be that angry with me. Well, in the garage, he handed me a 12 by 12 by 12 cardboard box and said, "Here, I think this is for you." And I opened it up, and it was so cool. It was everything that I expected it would be. And I looked at Dad, and I smiled at him real broadly, and I said, "Thank you, this is really great." And he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Well, let's go eat. But one other thing. Don't ever send a card like that out again without talking to your mom or me first." And that was it. But I think Dad liked the globe too. I think that's why he wasn't real upset. But that was my dad, easygoing, and even if I could handpick my dad, hands down, it would have been him. A boy could not have found a better one. But there was one time, and only one time I remember really ticking him off. And I wasn't going to put this in here, but I got to. I was about 7 years old, and my grandma and grandpa were coming out to our house for dinner. And it was summer day, summer afternoon, and I remember my grandma and grandpa sitting there in the garage, which is where we had, you know, gatherings, because it was quite large and nice. And I went out to say hi. And I don't know where I even got this expression from, but I went up to my grandma and I looked at her and I said, so, you rat, and spit in her face. Oh, the look on my dad's face. And he chased me. I ran. I knew I was in trouble. I ran, and he chased me, and I got under these bushes in the front of our house, and I got way back in there, and he was trying to pull me out. My mom was there saying, Frank, leave it alone. He didn't mean it. I should have had my butt whooped that time, but I didn't. I don't think I ever had a spanking in my life. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed these reminiscences of mine. We're going to look at a few more cartoons quickly, and then I'm going to give you a little rundown on what's coming up in the next month or so here on the Dennis Morrison channel and Charlie Cat Presents. And here we go again. All right. The best thing, you know, for me growing up was being a boy, because that is what God made me. A lot of kids today aren't sure what God made them, unfortunately. But I'm sure it was special to grow up as a girl also, and I hope to find material that will allow me to do a companion video to this for you ladies out in the audience. In the coming weeks, I have some interesting programs and projects in the works for you. There will be more, of course, about Native American Indian artifacts, but also about my historic Bible collection, which is pretty fascinating The oldest piece in that goes back to 1494, and I'm anxious to show that collection to you. There's a small collection of brass grave monument rubbings from Europe that I think that you might enjoy. Ironstone pottery that was dug out from the Saginaw River many years ago during the lumbering era. Wells Fargo postal covers. Wells Fargo, of course, had the stagecoaches that went out west and carried the mail out there, and much, much more. So if you've not subscribed, I'd like to personally invite you to do so. And when you do, be sure you click that bell icon so you'll be notified of any new video that I have coming up. Most of my videos for Charlie Cat Presents premiere on Friday nights at 6:30, but there are going to be some specials coming up too, so you'll want to be subscribed and notified when those come up. Now, I need to tell you something very, very true. Well, all this has been true, but very much from my heart. I appreciate each and every one of you that come here and view the videos. I appreciate your comments and the thumbs up. You have all become like good friends to me. Many of you write, and we communicate back and forth now. I just want you to know that I appreciate each and every one of you, and I love yous. This is a time in our country where things are really up in the air, and the one thing that we need to have for each other is, quite simply, respect. I respect y'all, I love yous, and thank you for being here, and I hope you'll join me again next week. God bless, and stay well.